It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, hockey fans? This is the Big Show. I'm Michael Traikos. With me, as always, Ryan Kennedy, and frequent fan of or friend of the Big Show, Devan Dubnyk. And guys, pleasure having you both on. Let's start with a little baseball talk. I know this is a hockey show, but what a heartbreaking Game 7, and what an exciting Game 7 that was between the Toronto Blue Jays and the LA Dodgers. I got to say, all three of us are from up north in Canada here. And, heartbreak has been on the minds of a lot of Canadians, especially with back-to-back Stanley Cup losses with the Edmonton Oilers to the Florida Panthers. So, Devan, what was worse, watching the Blue Jays lose in Game 7, or a couple years ago watching the Oilers lose in Game 7?
Probably the Oilers is a little tougher, just following it in the hockey and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, what a series it was. What a World Series, and it's hard to say just because they're so close. And they're not just close. We're not just talking like Game 7 close. We're talking like ninth inning Game 7, and then even after it's tied, like you're thinking it's there in the bottom of the ninth. And I mean, I got a lot of friends that are a lot more invested in it than I was. But if you can step back and not have the heartbreak of the outcome of the game, I mean, what a baseball game from start to finish. One of the best games I've ever watched. Just pure entertainment, but unfortunately, pretty heartbreaking at the end.
And
Ryan.
I rationalized it. Yeah, I rationalized it right away. I was like, who would have thought that the Jays could ever get this far? And it came so close. It was a toss-up. It's like maybe both teams were winners in the end.
Yeah,
that's how I rationalized
it. The Edmonton Oilers were able to make it back the next year, so we'll see if the Jays can, do the impossible. And I don't think anyone was picking them to be the, a playoff team, let alone a World Series contender this year. But stranger things have happened. Speaking of strange things happening in the NHL, the Pittsburgh Penguins at the top of these standings, or at least one of the hottest teams in the NHL right now. Who would have thought it, eh, Ryan? Those Penguins, who everyone picked to be a bottom 5 team. What do we make of this fabulous month of October that they went on? Is this just a hot start to the season, or is this something that they can sustain?
I think that it's reasonably sustainable. Like, if you look at the underlying numbers, like, they're not a great possession team, so there is that. But in terms of like PDO, like shooting percentage and save percentage of 5-on-5, like, they're not too far out of whack. There are certain teams that, there are certainly teams that have higher PDOs, and it usually comes down to the mean there. Part of it is Tristan Jarry playing very well, playing as well as he can. He has been kind of inconsistent in his career, but when he's on, he's on. So that really helps. And then, of course, you've got, guys like Malkin turning back the clock and playing excellent. The team has a pretty good shooting percentage. Are they like a number 1 seed? I don't know. But in that division, it feels like they could be top 3 for the entire season. And get into the playoffs in decent shape. So at this point, it doesn't feel like it's really too much of a mirage.
Devan, what do you make of the goaltending? Obviously, Tristan Jarry, 5-1-0 heading into Toronto, the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday night. He's got a .923 save percentage and a .235 goals against average. Those are pretty strong numbers. That's going to carry a team. Is it more goaltending, or is it the vets are doing what we kind of expect them to do as long as they're healthy?
Well, it's a little bit of everything that you just touched on, right? You've got Crosby and Malkin playing incredible, which is what they're going to need if they want to win. I mean, you say Malkin turned back the clock, but if these guys are going to win games, those guys still need to be the leaders and be a part of it. And I'm not surprised to see them doing what they're doing. Now you need to add the secondary scoring, which they're getting Brazo, and Mantha. And then you add the goaltending, and the goaltending's been great. whether that is sustainable at that level. There's always going to be ups and downs throughout the season, but Tristan Jarry seems to have certainly found his game here. And the more he can build on that and the confidence and just get these wins as they can. I think you mentioned, are they going to be at the very top at the end? Probably not. But they need to play this underdog card throughout this entire season. They were written off. Nobody thought they were going to be competitive. And not only are they competitive, they're at the top at the moment. And they need to ride that as long as they can in case there is a drop off at any point. But when the underlying numbers show they're not doing anything, they're not having unrealistic outcomes for what they're doing on the ice. There's no reason to think that this can't continue and find themselves in a playoff spot at the end of the year. I think that should be the goal, is be in the playoffs. In the dressing room, that's their goal. And that was their goal at the start of the season, kind of prove everybody wrong type thing. And I think they just have to stick with that from goaltending all the way out.
It'd be hilarious if these guys were buyers at the trade deadline. No one would have expected that. Like I mentioned, they're going to play the Toronto Maple Leafs today. The Leafs have not looked at all like the team that we expected right out of the gates. Now dealing with some injuries. On the good news front, William Nylander appears to be back in the lineup. The bad news, their defense took a major hit with Chris Tanev getting stretchered off the ice after really just a awkward looking hit where collided unknowingly with the Flyers player. It was Matvei Michkov. Tanev was already dealing with a concussion in the previous game, and this one's taking him out. That blue line, who steps up for Tanev? Who are you guys looking at when we're talking about, guys that can do maybe what Chris Tanev does from a shot blocking and just kind of a defensive standpoint?
Well, you're not going to replace Chris Tanev, but what you need is somebody like a Philippe Myers to play within himself, to give them minutes and just kind of play simple hockey where you do, you got to lay out for those block shots and things like that. But, it feels like in the absence of Chris Tanev, like that whole group is going to have to take on a little bit more responsibility. And I think now they have Dakota Mermis as their seventh. He's always been a defensive guy. You're not counting on him to rush the puck up the ice, so that's fine. If he sees the lineup, then again, it's sort of cliche, but it's like, just go out and play your game. Like, that's why they brought him up, is he was the guy that fit that profile. It's going to be tough, but I think what they have to do is just make sure everybody plays within themselves and trusts their teammates when they're in the defensive zone.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's going to get an opportunity to move up, but you're not. He's not replaceable, but he's not a big offensive guy, obviously. So that's a little tougher to lose, because you lose an offensive guy, you can't just replace them with another guy who's going to get those points. You can replace a Tanev as a group. He brings so many things leadership wise and the way he plays and defensively. So as a group, you can come together, just like you said. Everybody go out and play consistent, steady, trustworthy minutes, and that as a whole is going to replace Tanev's presence for hopefully a short period of time. And because what he brings is that calming, knowing what you're going to get every time he's on the ice, knowing the defensive side of it, the shot blocks, not going out there and trying to be Tanev, but going out there as a group and having that calmness and that trustworthy play on the defensive end is kind of how you fill the hole for the short period of time.
So Devan, obviously Chris Tanev, like you mentioned, he's not Morgan Riley. He's not a guy that's going to lug the puck up the ice. But as a goalie, losing a Tanev, would that be just a guy that you would hate to lose? A guy that's going to block shots, that's going to lose a couple chicklets if he needs to. Would that be a bigger loss than for a goalie like yourself than maybe an offensive defenseman?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a guy that comes out every single defensive situation. If you're up a goal and you're trying to hang on to it, penalty kill, all these situations that obviously are closer to you as a goaltender. He's hopping the boards, and whatever situation that is, he's coming out, and what you're going to get from him. You know he's going to lay out for you. You know he's going to make the right play, all of these things. So, yeah, as a goalie, you know, those are the guys that you're mainly concerned about. Obviously, you need the offensive guys to go to the other end and score for you so you can win the game. But when you're really trying to lock down, you know Tanev's going to hop the boards. You know he's the guy they're going to put on in these situations to work with you to keep the puck out of the net. And so as a goalie, you probably miss him more than anybody else.
Goalie's best friend. I love it. And, you know, a guy that, you know, Linus Ullmark could probably use a Chris Tanev about now. A rough start to the season for the Ottawa Senators goalie. And feels like we were saying this last year. I know last year he was dealing with some injuries. This year, it's just, you know, the play hasn't been there as we kind of expect it from a guy that, you know, really carried them in that playoff against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's got an .861 save percentage, a league worst -8 goals saved above expected. Ryan, how much stock do you put into this first month? Or is this a guy, because he's done it so many times before, probably just with the Boston Bruins, where you're saying, okay, he'll get his game eventually, and when he does, the Ottawa Senators will be fine?
Yeah, I'm not worried. I was looking at Ullmark's career stats, and he obviously had the one incredible year in Boston where I think he had a .938 save percentage. But in general, Linus Ullmark is like a .915 save percentage guy, which is very good. I mean, that's all you can really ask for from your starter. You'd love more, but .915, I feel right now, that's pretty decent. Obviously, he's got some work to do there, but he's been pretty consistently in that range throughout his career. The other thing I would say for Ottawa Senators fans, if they're worried right now, is look at Andrei Vasilevsky. He's heating up. You know, he started the year poor. I think his save percentage was down to like .870 or something like that, maybe .880. He's now at .899 and knocking on the door of, you know, breaking 900, which you would expect from Vasilevsky. There's a guy that you kind of expect .920, but had a slow start. I always felt, you know, it's like he'll figure it out. He's Andrei Vasilevsky. We're starting to see that now. I think he's given up 4 goals in his past 3 games total. That's the Vasi that everybody knows. So with Linus Ullmark, I think it's the same thing, maybe to a bit of a lesser extent, where I don't expect him to be necessarily, you know, a Vezina front runner, but I expect him to be a very good number 1 goaltender. And yeah, right now it's been rocky, but I would give him a little bit of leeway because he's shown that he can really turn it on.
Devan, were you a slow starter, hot starter? How were you as a goalie?
Oh, I just about everything you could imagine. So it's, you know, I think with Ullmark, you have to trust that the skill set's there and the goalie's there, and you know what you're going to get. So, you know, for the Senators, it's how quickly are you going to get it. So you're not concerned that you have a guy who doesn't know how to play goal anymore. You're concerned that we need to get him on track here sooner rather than later to get some wins in the win column. And that's really all that matters. It will come eventually. He's a great goalie. He's got everything you need. He's got a track record. It will come. It's just how quickly, you know, we're to the point now. It's time. It's got to come, and he's got to find his game. They got to help him find his game. But it will come, and for the team, it's getting it sooner so that those wins can come. But it's not a situation that you think, oh, we got a guy that forgot how to stop the puck. That's certainly not the case. Every year is different, and this has been a struggle for him to start. But all the tools are there, the experience is there. It will come around, but he's got to figure it out soon.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I know, you know, Levi Merilainen was leaned on a ton last year. And some Senators fans will tell you that without Merilainen, Ottawa Senators might not have been a playoff team. That's how much he was instrumental, especially when Ullmark was gone. You know, he's played 2 games so far, so I don't know if he's necessarily the answer. But, you know, this isn't the Boston Bruins situation for the Ottawa Senators. They don't necessarily have, you know, that guy that, you know, provides a tandem situation, although we'll see if Merilainen gets more play as it goes along. Let's go over to the West right now, where according to Elliot Friedman with Sportsnet, there's news that the Edmonton Oilers are trying to find a soft landing spot for veteran D-man Troy Stecher. Devan, does Troy Stecher hold enough on the trade market where you're expecting sort of a decent to good return?
I don't think that they're looking for much of a return. I think it's more of the roster spot for them. When they talk about a soft landing, I mean, you got a veteran guy, a well-liked guy. They don't just want to ship him somewhere where, he ends up, they want to find a good fit for him as a person and part of the organization right now. And the return is the roster spot. I really don't think that they're going to be shopping looking for some high draft pick. I mean, it's going to be a bottom draft pick. Potentially Freddie Charles, as my agent used to call future considerations. I was traded for him once. Hope he's doing well. But that's they're going to try to find a good fit for him, and then the roster spot is really the payoff. And he's just kind of a victim of numbers. And they also, if they're going to move somebody, it's somebody that other teams would be interested in. And because he's a veteran, he's been around for a long time, he's probably one of the guys that other teams also would be more interested in taking on.
Yeah, Ryan, he's played in 6 games this year, so it's not like he was a guy that was a regular in the lineup. But, with Troy Stecher, say he does go out the door, what would the Oilers be looking at? Like, if you're looking at that roster right now, are you seeing holes that they're looking to fill, or how would you describe them? Because I think they're days away from getting Zach Hyman back, are they not?
Maybe. And, for the Oilers, I think at this point, based on their roster construction, we know what the big parts are, right? And they have those guys all locked up. They've been pretty adamant that, they're happy with their goaltending as is, or at least they've sort of shown that through their actions. I agree with Devan on Stecher. If you can get like a 7th in 2027 for him, then like, hey, cool. I think, the best landing spot for him is probably a team that's maybe almost out of it already, that is thinking about, we could use just like a good guy in the room and somebody that can give us minutes, like a Nashville or even a Calgary. There have been Calgary Edmonton trades in history, not many, but it has happened. I think for the Oilers, if they can get somebody that's, more of a shutdown guy that they can add to their blue line core, I think that's worthy of looking at. They don't have cap space. So, it's got to be kind of a hockey trade, and maybe it doesn't involve Stecher. Maybe it's something. This is sort of a domino situation. But for me, with Edmonton, it's all preparing for what they hope is another run to the Stanley Cup final. I mean, that's where they're at right now as an organization.
Yeah, they're certainly situated or positioned for that. I know it's not been the greatest start by any means, but how many teams have kind of struggled out of the gates? And if I'm Edmonton, you're still in a spot where it looks like, making the playoffs, I imagine it's a lock. I can't see the Oilers falling out. It's just a matter of what you just said, Ryan, is how do you position yourself for that time when, the calendar turns to, mid-April and are all hands on deck. Let's go back to the East here. We're going to go kind of like globetrotting, it feels like, in the early part of this show here. But New Jersey Devils agreed to terms on a 2-year, $6 million AAV with Jacob Markstrom. Obviously, they're getting great goaltending from Jake Allen this year. Jacob Markstrom and Allen pretty much in a tandem situation with both guys. I'd say obviously Jake Allen has got the better numbers, but a pretty good tandem. Devan, thoughts on this deal and what Jersey has now locked up in their goaltender?
Well, yeah, it's a good deal for all. I mean, Markstrom's obviously coming. He's getting later in his career. $6 million is obviously a big number. It's not a big number. I don't like to say $6 million isn't a lot of money, because it is. But if if they're happy with their goaltending, which they are, it's a short-term thing. They have them for another 2 years. $6 million for your starting goaltender is just not a lot of money nowadays. And so that puts them in a situation that gives them freedom to do other things. And if they're happy with the guys they got, they're not locked in for a long time. If his play does decline a little bit, it leaves them options if something happens really with either of them. So certainly think he's, that's a good dollar amount for him. And again, for a starting goaltender at $6 million with the potential to be really, really good because it's kind of getting towards the tail end of his career. I think that it's good for all. I mean, Jacob Markstrom gets put $12 million in the bank over a couple of years, and it still keeps things freed up for New Jersey as they can see themselves continuing to be contenders more and more.
Yeah, and Jake Allen, for the record, 1.8 million cap hit. So combined, they got two goalies for under 8 million. Ryan, is Jacob Markstrom or is it Jake Allen the starter for you if the season ends today and the playoffs were to begin?
I mean, Allen has earned it, but I think in an ideal world, Markstrom needs to claw back that number one job. He is the goalie with the highest upside amongst the two. We've talked about Jake Allen on the show before. He's like the best backup goalie in the world because he can win you games. He can get hot for short periods of time. Like, he's just like the consummate professional in that regard. But if you're the New Jersey Devils, right now you are entering your Stanley Cup window. There's been a couple of false starts due to injuries, but assuming everybody's cool for the rest of the year, or at least, good for the playoffs, you have a potent lineup, you have a dynamic defense, and hopefully, you have a monster of a goalie in Jacob Markstrom who can really lock it down. Now, I like that this is only a 2-year contract extension for Markstrom because, as Devan noted, he is a veteran, he is older, and I think that the Devils have to have the flexibility where, assuming they make the playoffs this year, is Markstrom a net positive or a net negative? Because we've seen both from him in the playoffs before with other franchises. 2 years means you can say, okay, do we have faith in Jacob Markstrom to take us all the way to a Stanley Cup or not? And if it's the latter, then at least you're not buried with that contract. You can start thinking about, okay, well, who else is going to come out on the market? Is there a trade that we can make with a team to get somebody that we're more confident with in the postseason? So I do like the flexibility because I think this is a massive year for New Jersey where they need to see if they can put a few rounds together, led by Jack Hughes and I guess to a lesser extent, Luke Hughes at this point, on top of the Nico Hischers and everybody else, the Dougie Hamiltons that they have in their lineup.
Hey, Ryan, you brought up a good point there. You said Jake Allen is like the consummate backup and the best backup maybe in the NHL. And, Devan, I'm kind of curious because sometimes you hear that, like, this guy is just a great backup. And a lot of times they're talking about on ice, but sometimes they're also talking about off ice. And Jake Allen obviously won a Stanley Cup as Jordan Binnington's backup during that playoffs. And you never heard anything about him making waves about how he should have been the starter or anything like that. What goes into, being the backup and being a good backup both on and off the ice?
Well, it's being comfortable with that role and knowing, not getting upset, not having higher expectations than you should. And with Jake Allen, you look at him is he's ready to perform however that is. He's gonna contribute in practice. He's gonna contribute in the dressing room. He's gonna come in if he hasn't played in 2 weeks. He's gonna come in. He's gonna give you a game. If Markstrom's not playing well and you need him to come in, he's gonna come in and win you a game. He might win you 2 games, 3 games. He's got that ability to do that. And then if Jacob Markstrom gets hurt, he's able to come in and be your starting goalie and not just kind of keep your head above water starting goalie, a good starting goalie. And so that's when you talk about being the best backup, he's going to give you everything you want out of a backup, whether it's a game every 2 weeks or whether it's 5 games in a row. Whatever he's asked, he's going to give it to you and he's going to be ready to do it. And then he's going to contribute to the team every single day, whether he's playing or not. And I think that's an important part of a backup goalie is being in the dressing room, having energy, being involved, whether you're playing or not. And one guy that I played with that was really good that way was Al Stalock. I played a lot of games. There were long stretches that he didn't play, but every single day he contributed to the team. He worked his butt off in practice. He was funny in the dressing room. He always had energy. He's always joking. He brought something to the group every single day, even when he wasn't playing. And then when he did go out and play, he worked his butt off and he gave the team a good effort. So these are all pieces that make up a great backup goalie. And then with Allen, you have the bonus side of it where we're having a conversation of who's the starter right now.
Yeah. Team Canada should have a conversation about Jake Allen right now, because he's just been incredible and probably one of the more underrated goaltenders in the NHL, just because, I don't know, he just doesn't seem to get the proper flowers for what he does. But again, let's keep things moving here. Montreal Canadiens, first team in NHL history, kind of hard to believe, first team in NHL history to win 5 of their first 12 games in overtime. I kind of love these stats where they're just a little random, but also kind of like, oh, interesting. So they won 5 of the first 12 games in overtime. Devan, does it like when you're a goalie and a game goes to overtime, how does it feel? Does it matter that these games are being won in this kind of close fashion, or is a win a win at this point of the season?
A win's a win at this point of the season. Ask the Minnesota Wild. They're right. You mix in a couple overtime wins, and their dressing room is feeling a whole lot different than they are. And it's a funny thing with the overtime shootout games, because when you're in them, it's like if you lose, it's frustrating because you're this close to getting a win, but we got a point. And it's not that anybody isn't disappointed, but you got a point. Well, all of a sudden you go to the end of the year and you're scratching and clawing for a playoff spot, and you look back and you have 8 losses in a shootout or overtime or whatever. And you're like, wow, if we had half of those, we'd be comfortable right now. And so they do add up as the season goes on. And so you have to try to understand that you got a point, but you need 2. So the way that you play in overtime is important, even though it's 3-on-3. And going into a shootout, it's not just a skills competition. You got to go try to win the shootout, because these points do matter. And, towards the end, if you're playing, you could look at it, and if you're playing divisional guys, obviously that it's not quite as great if you get an overtime win because the other team gets a point too, or if other teams are playing against each other. If you're playing someone from the opposite conference, overtime win doesn't matter. You don't care if they get points. But at the end of the day, I think it's a huge asset for Montreal. You got Cole Caulfield who lights it up in overtime, and having that confidence when you enter, if the game's tied after 60 minutes, having a feeling of, hey, we're going to go win this, as opposed to, like I mentioned before, the Minnesota Wild, who seem to go out in overtime and everything goes well for them, and then the puck ends up in the back of their net. Not due to goalies, just a bounce will go, it's a breakaway the other way. Now you enter overtime feeling not great about getting this win, and it really snowballs, it builds up. You lose a couple like that, and then you don't have this feeling, instead of having what Montreal has, is like, hey, we'll go an extra 60, we'll go past 60 minutes because we're gonna grab that extra point regardless.
Right, Ryan, you seen anything about that Montreal team that just makes them so good in overtime? Like, Devan mentioned Cole Caulfield, who seems to be the guy you want on the ice when it is 3-on-3. But is that just kind of sort of how they're built for that moment?
Yeah, they seem to be kind of an ideal 3-on-3 team where, they have so much skill, and a lot of their skilled guys don't necessarily have size either, right? You think of Caulfield, think of Lane Hudson, even like Alex Newhook or Nick Suzuki. None of them are big, but when there's so much extra ice out there, that's fine. And I think it's interesting because I was trying to think like, oh, is this kind of an advantage of them heading into the playoffs? But it's completely different overtime, right? It's not 3-on-3 in the postseason. At the least, you figure, guys like Caulfield would have the confidence to say, you know what, do or die. I'm completely comfortable with this scenario. We've done it many times already this year and usually come out on top. So I guess it's a bit of a feather in their cap looking forward. But in general, yeah, I just think that, this is a team built on skill. And, Marty St. Louis as the coach, like, you can't ask for a better guy who was undersized and incredibly skilled. We'll call him undersized and overskilled since he was one of the most skilled players of his era. But yeah, I mean, right now, 3-on-3 is just delightful for the Habs.
Ryan, are you starting to come around on the Montreal Canadiens as a quote unquote legit contender?
I don't know about legit contender because, again, overall being a bit of a smaller team, like, what does that look like in the postseason? Like, even if they're playing, let's say, Ottawa in the first round and Brady Tkachuk is, back healthy 100%, like, how are you going to handle a guy like Brady Tkachuk? And, even like Tim Stützle's not like a huge guy, but he's like physical and plays with an edge. So I'm intrigued for sure, but I would be worried. Or like, if they have to play like Florida in the first round, like, what does that matchup look like? It probably does not favor the Canadiens just because of how the postseason operates. But hey, they've been surprising so far, so who knows?
But listen, no one's matchup against Florida favors the opponent, okay?
Probably
doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
You know what? And touching on the contender thing, I think you have to look at, like, what is a true contender? Because it's like I think we kind of, like, who are real contenders? You've got, like, out west, right? Colorado, Dallas, Vegas, Edmonton, true, not just playoff teams, true contenders. Yeah. Out, and then who is it out east? Florida. We would think Toronto, possibly, Carolina, maybe New Jersey, like these teams who are, it's like, you have to look at a team, can they win a playoff round or can they actually go all the way? Mm-hmm. Now with Montreal, you can't say they're not until they get there, because if they have a great regular season and they look like they have all the pieces, and then they go into the playoffs and they get up against a contender, and the contender just steps on their throat and says, no, it's big boy time. Well, then you can go back and say, we have things to learn. But they can only show they're a contender when they get to that stage and play against a true contender, not just make the playoffs and have a pretty good playoff round, but get up against a true contender and knock them off in a good playoff round. That's then what proves that they are truly a contender and not just a playoff team.
That's a good point. Montreal, they lost to Washington, right? Last year in the first round. That was one where I thought, we could have seen an upset. Obviously, Washington was the top seed in the East, and Montreal was kind of that team that, was playing with house money, as they always say. This year, I think expectations are higher. Like, I saw the Canadiens against the Leafs in game 1 of the season and was blown away by just how fast they were. Kind of a similar experience when I watched New Jersey this year too. And, speed kills. Like, I know what you're saying, Ryan, in terms of the physicality, but when you got a team that's that fast and, they've got so many good puck movers on the back end, that can be as intimidating as a team that can kind of, drive you through the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, folks, for 75 years. Oh, and it's coming. All right, we're going down to rapid fire in a second here, if I can get the proper ad read. For some reason, my computer is glitching. All right, let's see if we can do this here. For 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate fix. Now get all 12 issues delivered straight to your door, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. And now, finally, for rapid fire. All right, let's start right away. Ryan, yay or nay, wearing dark helmets with white uniforms, as the Senators did on Saturday? Is that a jersey fashion foul, or are you down with it?
No, I'm a yay on this. I'm okay with it. I thought it looked all right. I thought it looked pretty good. And like San Jose's been doing it too. They've been going teal helmets with white jerseys, and I think it's pretty snazzy. So yeah, one of my favorite Spaceballs characters, dark helmet.
I'm gonna go with nay. I don't mind the San Jose because the teal's a lighter color. But I feel like the dark helmets with white jerseys just makes me feel like I'm watching like a junior team or something. I'm watching a team that only has one set of helmets that wears that color helmets for every jersey they have. I don't know. It's not NHL to me. White helmets, white jerseys. That's just the way it is. I want to see my team match up. I want to see that they have multiple sets of helmets, multiple sets of gloves. I want it to look like the pros.
Interesting perspective.
Right.
Honestly, I didn't even notice until this question came up. But I love that the NHL keeps trying these kind of things. It seems like there's always a different uniform scheme, and the helmets they're really playing around with. So, yeah, I'll say yay for me. Yeah. Second question. Start with Devan here. Ilya Samsonov, former Leafs goaltender, as well as a Washington Capitals goaltender and others, has signed in the KHL. Odds on will he ever return to the NHL again?
I'm going to go with not very good. You got a Russian guy, usually they enjoy playing at home, which of course you can't blame them for that. And it's not like he's some sort of hot commodity over here that somebody's going to be itching to get over. Now, if he goes over there and he lights it up, maybe, but then again, it's a combination of, I don't think anybody's going to be dying to have him here. I'm sure they would have him, but not trying to drag him back. He's going to be making more money over there than he would here. I guarantee that. And then whether he even wants to come back again, those guys, they like playing at home, and if he goes there, he's going to be making good money in the KHL. He's going to be playing it in his home country. It's hard to imagine he would even want to come back necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. I would say the only remote possibility, because I mean he's already in his 30s too. The only remote possibility would be if the NHL expands in a couple of years and an expansion team says like, hey, we'll make you the starter, throw you starters money. We need somebody because the expansion draft yielded nothing to us. But that would be remote. I agree with Devan that I'm saying he's 98% chance staying in Russia.
Ooh. For the record, only 28 years old. I thought he was older too.
Oh,
I guess
he did
come a little earlier. Yeah. I kind of agree with both of you. He didn't make it work in Vegas last year, and I think that was probably his best opportunity. Obviously, he was on a couple of playoff teams in Toronto, but when you go to Vegas and you don't work out with that roster in front of you, it's tough to make the argument that you deserve another shot. Although, like I said, 28 years old, he's still got a lot of years left in him, you'd think. Ryan, name one player you think is on a hot streak right now and one player who is on a cold streak right now.
All right, for hot streak, I'm going with Connor Bedard in Chicago. He's starting to live up to the hype that we originally had for him. He's got 8 points in his past 4 games, and I think he's at 15 on the season now. So hot streak for Connor Bedard. As for a cold streak, Evander Kane in Vancouver has 0 goals so far in 13 games. He's got 5 assists, which I guess is something. But yeah, he's on pace for 0 goals. And, the Canucks brought him in to be, a top 6 power forward, and they've gotten nothing from him so far. So that's got to change in a hurry.
I'm sure
Evander's got a hot streak for us.
I'm sure Evander's a real treat to be around right now.
I bet.
he's not always a treat to be around if he's got 50 goals right now. So I can only imagine. I'm going to go an easy one here. Macklin Celebrini. I mean, every time I turn my TV on, I'm seeing something Celebrini. He just looks unbelievable and doesn't look like there's anything that's going to be slowing him down. So he's been fun to watch to start this year. And like I said, I mean, it's hard to imagine he's not working himself into conversations for the Olympics. I don't know how you could watch him, what he's doing right now and think otherwise. So I've really enjoyed watching him. As far as cold streaks, I was wanting to, you stole my cold streak, but I'll go with, because that's an easy one. I'll go with Svechnikov in Carolina. I believe he's got 2 goals, 1 assist, -1 in 11 games. And that's just not what they're expecting from him. Fortunately for Carolina, they do have a deep team. They're not gonna fall off a cliff because he's not performing. But he's an important part of their team that they're gonna need to do better than that. And it's been a tough start for the year. But like I said, when you have a team like Carolina they're deep and the guys are going to step up. You're still going to win games. It certainly makes it a lot easier to work yourself out of that cold streak.
All right, I'm gonna go with the hot and cold here. A hot streak. I'm going with Mark Scheifele. 20 points, leading the NHL right now in scoring. This guy has to make it his way onto Team Canada. If he doesn't, then I know something is up. Something beyond the points is up. And cold streak, guys, are you paying attention to what Alex Ovechkin is doing right now? 2 goals on the season. Ryan and I were talking about when is he going to score 900, and we were kind of like, all right, it's going to happen any day now. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. And now Alex Ovechkin is demoted to the third line with Hendrix Laperriere and Sonny Milano. His ice time is down. His shooting percentage has never been lower. And the Capitals are really suffering. I don't know what's going on with Alex Ovechkin, aside from the fact that the guy's 40 years old. And, I guess maybe father time does come for all of us. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Is father time finally coming for Alex Ovechkin?
Possibly. He's one of those guys we were so used to watching him defy that, he'd still go out there. But at some point it's going to happen. Now he's still a guy. It doesn't matter. If he slows down, I think the shooting percentage thing, I think that'll come back. It's not something he's not going to lose his scoring touch. It's getting into positions and whatnot to score. And I'm going to give him a long leash. We're talking about 900 goals here, so give him a little bit of a breather. But at some point, right? We don't want to think about it with these guys. These guys are our heroes and the guys that we've watched, and we don't want to think about it. But at some point, it is going to happen. But I don't think that over a season, this is what we're going to see from Ovi.
Yeah. Father Time is undefeated. Russian machine never breaks, but he might just need to, go in for a tune-up.
Just need some Russian gas, whatever that may be.
Get the Russian gas, yeah. I don't know if you can export that under these current political circumstances. Maybe they can find some sort of loophole, but he got the record. He already has a Stanley Cup. It feels like this season might be a bit of an exhalation for him, and it's probably his last season. So I will firmly state he will get 900 goals since he's at 899. But are we going to see a 40-goal season from Ovechkin? It's not looking too good at this point.
All right, last question, guys. And if you guys could see the desk I'm working on right now, you would just see all these wrappers. Okay, these are Reese's Pieces right now. Nice. I'm afraid to go to the dentist because I probably have 3 or 4 fillings that need to be filled. Devan, how much Halloween candy did you eat over the weekend? And did you sneak into your kids' bags if they're still trick-or-treating?
Well, we got a ridiculous haul here, so I don't have to sneak anywhere. It's all over the house. But I've been making a conscious effort not to have too much just because it's so good that I'll get into it and then realize I feel sick when it's already too late. So definitely picking away. That's not going to stop. There's too many good chocolate bars floating around that I'll be picking away at them for a long time. But was pretty good this weekend, not making myself sick at least.
You're better than I am, man. Thank God for shrinkflation because they make them smaller these days, which means I can just eat more. Ryan, how about you? Were you as bad as me, or were you kind of better and kind of like Devan?
I think I'm more on the Devan side. I've been holding myself down to maybe like a half dozen mini chocolate bars a day. The key is when you give out the candy, you buy a couple of different kinds, and then you judiciously keep the ones you like the most. So if you don't run out, then you're left with all the good peanut butter cups and stuff like that. So I'm gravitating towards those. And of course the Kit Kats and Coffee Crisps and whatnot that come in the standard Canadian box.
There you go. Canadian candy bars. You can't beat them.
You cannot beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks again, everyone. For Devan Dubnyk and Ryan Kennedy, I'm Michael Traikos. This was the Hockey News' Big Show. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.